welcome to Cargo Film Presents. My name is Dave.
And I'm Dan.
On Cargo Film Presents, we talk documentary films, current documentary films that we checked out and recommend and dissect and discussed. This week we're talking about Summer of Soul. Summer of Soul is a film that documents the Harlem Cultural Festival.
Nobody ever heard of the Harlem Cultural Festival. Nobody would believe that happened.
Started off as footage that was shot over 6 weekends over the summer of 1969 in Harlem, as some of the country's most notable Black artists performed for Harlem audiences. The footage lay dormant up to now, as it seems that there were no takers back then in the film industry who wanted to do anything with the footage. And the original filmmakers tried to sell it, back in the day, and then it lay dormant up till now. And Questlove is making his directorial debut, putting together this story and capturing a moment in time of not only in the collective life of Black America, but also a wonderful cross-section of Black and Latinx American music of that era. So while it's been marketed as a film that documents the event as that time forgot, even though 300,000 people, were there and saw it, and a good number of those people are still with us, still the film does firmly place it as an event on the musical and cultural map, finally. So what are your thoughts, Dan?
Finally, yeah. I don't have that much to say, except you should go and see it right away. It's on Hulu. It's in theaters. This 40 hours of footage from the Harlem Cultural Festival that's, been lost and, erased in a way for 52 years, kind of demands, I think, viewership. There's so many wonderful things about it. I think I saw an article in The Guardian that said this, the greatest concert film, ? Perhaps, but it's more than a concert film, right? I mean, the performances are amazing, but I think what Questlove does really well in this is it's also a kind of remix film, which I love, in the sense that the music from the festival becomes a kind of backdrop for a conversation and a discussion, a recontextualization of this, pivotal moment in kind of Black culture, where things were kind of changing in terms of style, politics, art. And, it really does a really wonderful job of giving you both all of that context, all of that sort of information, while at the same time, allowing you to enjoy some of these incredible music performances.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it the best concert movie of all time, and I have to think about what that is. And we talked about Gimme Shelter on this show, and I think that would be up there for me, but perhaps less about the music than for what was going on around those events. And anyway, but as far as concert movies go, it's absolutely excellent. It is, and you hear a lot of music, almost full songs or full songs, and the shooters did a great job capturing the crowds, enjoying the show. But I kept thinking about what Questlove's task was and what he set out to do here. He's clearly doing this in the shadow of what is the cottage industry that is Woodstock in '69, not the one in '99, and all the the film, the spin-offs, the books, and the countless articles that have been written about it. And he's trying to make this event's story act, maybe as a counterweight to that huge cultural event, or at the very least, he's trying to fill in the blanks of what was happening, in America at that time, culturally and musically. So while Woodstock, I think, will always kind of tower over these events of that era for what it kind of represented in of the '60s, for large swaths of American youth, this film does give you a fuller picture of America in '69. So Mr. Questlove certainly succeeds in doing that.
wasn't just about the music.
1969 was a change of era in the black community.
The styles were changing.
Music was changing.
And revolution was coming together.
We are a new people.
Completely, I agree with that. And, I thought it was also interesting to point out, as you said, it was kind of looking at and taking the temperature of America in that particular time period in the Black community and in Black culture. And, there is one sequence, the festival took place during the moon landings.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of archive talking, about people at the festival responding to questions from, the news, asking them what they thought about the moon landing and what it meant, in comparison to the music festival. And, most people responded that they didn't really care that much about the moon landing or what was going on. They cared about, people who were starving in America and trying to survive in America and the social problems that were going on at the time. And, it made me think about this week. We have had a mega billionaire go to the moon, and we're still talking about, race problems in America. So, things change, things stay the same. So I thought that was an interesting, juxtaposition happening this
For sure.
week.
Yeah. A very, very kind of powerful metaphor of the kind of the social concerns of Black and white people in America at that time by filming those reactions. But going back to just the point about, because the film has been called in the press, Black Woodstock, and, the event itself in Harlem, certainly wasn't as raw as Woodstock was. And, mainly because the music that was featured is for people both young and old. They had gospel and to jazz, and they had some pop and funk. It's very much a kind of a family affair, to quote Sly Stone. but you, as you said, you get the feel of all the cultural, social stuff that was percolating at that time by watching this film. So it's absolutely essential viewing to get a feel for that era.
Yeah, you do. And you also get a sense of what the music, as you were saying before, it's more than a music festival, more than a kind of music festival film. You get a sense of what, Black music actually meant to people.
Yeah.
Especially gospel, you've got people like Al Sharpton and others talking about how gospel was a form of therapy for Black people, certainly at that time, and their experiences with Black pain and everything that they were going through in America. So you get these incredible performances from Mahalia Jackson and the Staple Sisters. So, also provides a sort of a deeper understanding of music. It's not just let's, enjoy some great musical performances. Let's sort of unpack the meaning of this in a kind of cultural context.
Yeah, and let's face it, and there's great music in this film, which is one of the reasons to watch it. You've got a 19-year-old Stevie Wonder, who and they also interview him. And I haven't seen Stevie Wonder interviewed in a long time.
Yeah.
But he's interviewed for this, and he talks about how he was pivoting from being a pop artist, had made his name as a pop artist, and looking to embrace his African American heritage in a big way, and move away from those kind of pop. Of course, Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, no one looked better than Sly Stone, except maybe the promoter, Tony Lawrence, who looked really sharp. And David Ruffin. I've always been a Temptations fan. I can't help it. And he had just left the group. Max Roach and Abbey Lincoln were doing, political jazz music. And Gladys Knight and the Pips. Boy, the Pips. Those guys can dance, man.
They
can
move.
They can move. Right. But, you got to talk about, of course, the raw emotion from Mavis Staples and Mahalia Jackson on stage together singing, that song, Take My Hand, Precious Lord. And I didn't know the story of, Martin Luther King's last words, to his musician friend, whose name I can't remember now, was that he wanted to have that song played that evening right before he was shot. And so, this was, something like a bit more than a year after his assassination. And so singing that song so close to that event, as you said, as Al Sharpton said, it's like the music acted as a bomb for a lot of people in the Black community.
That concert took my life from black and white into color.
We wanted progress. We are Black people, and we should be proud of this.
We were coming together to say this was our world and how beautiful it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting too. Like Jesse Jackson. I mean, like you've seen him so many times in the media and give so many speeches and so many performances. It's this fact that you forget some of the power that figures like that had, like seeing them again in their prime. I mean, Jesse Jackson just blew me away. His speeches, which were, I guess they were accompanied by some music. So it's kind of, this cool element to it as well, but very emotional, very powerful, as you said, just a year after Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot. So you really get that you got those incredibly powerful, moments from those guys who we now think of like, oh yeah, Jesse Jackson, of course, I've seen him speak a million times. I know his shtick, but you're like, wow, Jesse Jackson was a force, man. He could bring it. And he did.
He could command the crowd. Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah.
And that's it. Exactly. And that's why I think these kinds of, this kind of footage being packaged in documentary form are so relevant to visit and revisit, so that we can appreciate, people in their prime, doing what they did, be it the activists and politicians, but, and the musicians themselves. So yeah, good point. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say same with Sly Stone. I haven't really seen that kind of, performance footage of him in his prime and how he could work an audience and how in sync, the kind of synergy between him and the audience is just it's just a joyful thing to watch. And just for that alone, like, I mean, like, I would watch this film again.
Yeah, exactly. And in a theater, perhaps too. So last thing I wanted to bring up was, all the speculation as to why this film didn't get made, back then. Of course, one strong theory is that film companies considered it a music festival film, and they thought that only played to wide audiences. They had Woodstock, even though Woodstock, the event happened after this event later in the summer.
Yeah.
But you also had Gimme Shelter and Monterey Pop, either coming before or around the same time. So that makes a little bit of sense. Films back then, I guess as far as I know, weren't necessarily heavily marketed to Black audiences all that much. I think you had people like Melvin Van Peebles, and maybe some of the beginnings of like Blaxploitation film. I looked it up, but Shaft had been released in 1971. So it was perhaps it just happened a hair too soon for film companies to recognize the potential here. And let's face it, obviously, the people that were controlling the distribution of films back then, clearly there was not a lot of representation going on for them to notice, right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't have any, evidence or anything to support that either, but just to suggest, I mean, I think that's one of the thoughts that the film offers is that, as a Black community, as Black cultural creators, we need to have, our hands in the studio. We need to own the studios. We need to be distributing our own films. Those kind of ideas were there. I think through Max Roach was talking about that in the film. And so, yeah, you see some of that stuff start to happen in the 70s, but yeah, I guess at this point in the late 60s, 69 or 70, you've got like Woodstock and those other concert fields dominating the cultural conversation, and certainly being a much more limited way, I suppose, to get films out there at the time, that there's just like, this is this is not happening. But
Yeah.
but it
Yeah,
is.
I was, but I also think that even today, in some of the press that I've read, that they are referring it to Black Woodstock, and the original filmmakers also kind of marketed it as
Oh, right. Yeah.
as that. And again, and I think, as sales agents, we know all about pitching and trying to find a way into telling a good story and make it a widely appealing to a lot of people. I'm not sure if that was the best way of capturing, this film. This wasn't a film that, like Woodstock, captured, youth culture in kind of in an extreme form, like the end of the 60s at Woodstock, which is what that event and that film kind of was. But as we said earlier, it's an all ages show for the good people of Harlem, young and old, and it celebrated Black pride, culture, music, fashion at this moment in time. And in fact, I read that Jimi Hendrix wanted to attend the Harlem Cultural Festival, but was deemed too radical for this.
Wow, right.
Yeah, and he was refused, which is really too bad. Even though apparently he did kind of stick around the show and jam with some of the artists afterwards and kind of after hours, which would have been cool to capture as well. But anyway, all to say that, this isn't and was never kind of Black Woodstock.
No,
it's the Harlem Cultural Festival,
it's the
and
summer
perhaps
soul.
the summer of soul. You got it exactly right. They finally got the marketing right.
That's right.
And maybe that would have helped. Mind you, representation and distribution, of course, is required as well.
Yeah.
So it is easier to get films like this out in any era.
We believed in what we felt in here. So when we went up, let's go do it.
Well, so that's it. Any final thoughts?
I just want to also just add how, just the importance of history and representation. I think that's also one of Questlove's, mission in making this film. Part of the message is, this is just an erased part of history in some way, and not having this as part of, the American conversation, as part of our shared cultural history is a real shame, and it needs to be, it needs to be corrected in some way. So I really appreciate that about it too. Is like, it just feels like, wow, how could I have not seen this? Why is this not part of our, both our cultural, our American history, our musical history? Like, it's just like, what? So
well, it is now. So
now.
we appreciate you, Mr. Questlove, for having put in the work. And I'm not going to call you Mr. Questlove again. I'm sorry. For putting in the work and getting this film packaged and told in a super compelling way. Check it out. It's on Hulu and in theaters. Summer of Soul. See you next time.
See you then.